That's fine.
All right. You weren't expecting that, were you? I hit the button and then you were like, oh man.
It's okay. I thought I had to check something panic moment, but that's just my own crazy getting in the way of getting this done.
No worries. So welcome Facebook folks, LinkedIn folks, and if you're tuning in on YouTube, we're also there. This is our Meet the Board series, and we've got Kelley Dolan here today. How's life in the big city?
Life in the big city is good. It's, a hectic weekend in the city. It's funny. Thanksgiving weekend is both hectic and really quiet, depending on where you place yourself. But I love fall in Manhattan. It's the best time to be here. So if you've ever debated coming in, that's the season I highly recommend, because it's perfect temperature wise.
Why fall? Summer and winter are kind of obvious to me. It's either too hot or too cold.
Yeah. So spring is also lovely, but there's a lot of pent up energy for everyone being inside.
The New Yorkers have a little bit of closeted rage.
Yeah, so everyone's a little ready to go. So fall's just a little more peaceful. And if you time it right, you can catch some of the holiday stuff, right? See the Christmas windows and the tree, and it can be really lovely.
All right, so I'm not a city boy by any stretch. I was kind of raised in a cornfield, and now I live on an island in the middle of nowhere.
I live on an island too.
But the opposite of the middle of nowhere, for sure.
Yeah.
If I came to New York City, I had 24 hours, and I came to New York City, and I said, give me two things I need to do. What would you have me do?
I would have you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because it is so big that no matter what kind of art you like, you'll find something you like there.
Got it.
It happens to sit right on Central Park, which is also one of my most favorite places kind of in the world. So you can bang kind of two out right there. I also really love the Bronx Zoo. So if you're a person who's willing to get on a subway and transfer over to a different place, that's good. And also I would say just walking around downtown, OG Manhattan, original Manhattan, is really interesting. It is a very old part of the city. The 9/11 memorials are all very amazing. Yeah. But it is also just the old buildings are there. Everything's pretty historical. Cobblestone streets still every once in a while, which just watch your ankles. Don't
wear heels if you're a lady.
Yeah, I don't recommend walking around. This city is
or a guy who likes heels.
Yeah, the city is a shoe killer. So make sure whatever you're walking in can handle it.
Got it. So I actually don't know the answer to my first question for you. How'd you get started in property restoration? My cliche statement is always, none of us were in the sandbox at 9 years old being like, I want to suck water out of basements because it's fun, right? We all end up here, and that story is usually pretty fun.
Yeah, I transplanted to Manhattan from where I grew up in New Hampshire and New England, and needed a job because I was here in the city. I interviewed at this weird place called Maxon's on my birthday was my interview. So it seemed a little destined. And I just really loved the people. I didn't fully understand what they did, but I was like, this seems like a cool group of folks. So when I came back on, it was through a temp agency, and I was doing sales support. I was 23. So I was young when I got in, 22 or 23. Yeah, right in there. And sort of just learned the business. It was also perfect because in taking jobs right over the phone, because I was general admin support, so I was kind of doing everything. I literally had to learn the geography of this big new place I had moved to because I needed to understand where jobs were, and know how to get them to the right people. So it really kind of lined up really perfectly. And then many years later, it was funny. I think I was stressed out about something. I was at my older brother's and I was talking, and I just started furiously cleaning his kitchen in my stress mode. And he's like, have you ever thought about how interesting it is you work for a company that does cleaning work when this is clearly your stress move? And it cracked me up. And I was like, yeah, you know what? It's been the universe had this planned. It sent me here. So yeah, it was sort of random. And then a lot of the signs pointed to this is your calling.
Nice. And so where did you move from outside of the city, I assume?
Yeah, I grew up in New England and New Hampshire. So very different lifestyle.
Yeah. They don't have cornfields in New Hampshire. What are the fields?
They do, but a lot more, they're smaller, and like, the soil is kind of crap in New England. It's all really stony, so everything's kind of small.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more maple trees are big up there, so
Yeah.
the maple syrup situation is real. Yeah.
My stepdad went on like a tapping maple trees binge, and he got kind of nuts with it, like tapping trees maybe he shouldn't be tapping in the neighborhood, that kind of stuff. Clandestine tapping, as I would say it. So that's a real thing.
Yeah. Sort of like the lobster game in Maine. You have to be careful.
I spent a week in Newport, Oregon, and we went crabbing, and I can't stop thinking about crab pots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Maxon's became first on site. Was it 4 or 5 years ago now?
Actually, only 3, I believe.
Is that 3?
3, yeah. 2.5. Yeah, we're
2.5.
there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, my time horizon's way off. And so, talk to me about that whole transition. You and I had a little bit of a frank conversation at our last board meeting, and I really appreciated your perspective. So I want to give you the opportunity to share your perspective on the backside of it, because yours was a story I hadn't heard told that way before.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a lot of work. As a leader here at Maxon's, there were a few of us that were obviously in the know a little bit earlier, because we had to do a lot for the acquisition, right?
Yeah.
To First OnSite's credit, they're so thorough in the process, and they are very choosy about who and how they bring on board. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of double checking. There's a lot of kind of cross-referencing stuff. There's a lot of making sure who we say we are is factual. Mm-hmm. So I'd say 6 months leading up to it, there was even longer than that. There was a lot of work we had to do, and sort of not talk about, and not, it is confidential. So we kind of felt a little lonely at times as a group. Mm-hmm. And then when we came on board, there's still more work. Like, now you're on board. Yeah. Now you got to get into all the systems and all the processes. So we were at a time where First OnSite didn't have a lot of its new systems kind of finished. So we sort of stayed situation normal for a little while and just had to change a few things. So it became a really long, slow process. But the stuff that started to change first was really the back end stuff for the staff, right? So we got, now as a bigger company, we have access to better benefits. We have access to more benefits. Everyone immediately got more time off. It was like, hey, nice. We have this big announcement, but don't worry, you're going to get more PTO. Everybody's okay. Everyone was then okay. It's interesting. We had some people who had left kind of before and in the midst of the acquisition because it made them nervous, or they were ready for something different. They've come back. We've had multiple people now return, cool. Seeing that it's not always just the company name. It's the people you worked with and who was on staff. So kind of to the family, as we like to say. And then there was a lot of adjusting, honestly, as I think generally, if you were at a senior leadership level at a smaller firm, now you're at this huge firm, and you're not the most important person in the room anymore. And how do you really adjust to that? And how do you find your new home in this bigger company? And how do you continue to contribute and feel like a part of the machine, like you might have been? And I got really lucky. I got so lucky, because I think I did so many things here. They didn't want to lose my skill set. And kind of anytime sort of a project, I got connected with our chief administrative officer right away. And he sort of had a similar career path to me, just at much bigger companies. Like, he handled IT, he handled HR, he handled all the things I had done. So he and I would just tag team projects internally for the company for a little while until, we figured out where I should be kind of at First OnSite. But it's hard. It's a lot of change. And the Kubler-Ross change curve comes up a lot about, you've been in it longer, but your staff hasn't. So you're a little further along the process, and you kind of have to have patience for them and bring them along with you. And it's a lot. It is a lot to handle. Especially I had been here almost 20 years when we did it. So I literally grew up here. I hadn't worked anywhere else.
Well, that's fun. What would you say is like, if you had to put your finger on one of the greatest benefits, right? Everybody always likes to talk on the other side and demonize the consolidation of our industry. But, you in your position, right? You're not, you weren't an owner at the time of acquisition, right? You didn't get to cash a check and get out. You had a decision to stay or go find something else to do, right? So you obviously chose to stay. Tell me why.
Well, I honestly, like, especially coming from such a tight knit group at Maxons, we were less than 50 people. So we were like really tight.
Yeah.
Moving to a big company, I was a little nervous, but literally everyone I've met at First Onsite has been amazing. Like, the group of people at that company made me really prove my dedication. Like, I was like, okay, I want to show these people what I can do. And they showed me that they had faith that I had value to them. They weren't just like, oh, you're not gonna, all your jobs are done by 12 other people here, you're not gonna fit. They really sort of showed me they wanted to invest in me and make me happy as a staff member. So for me, it was huge. It was an amazing opportunity that I never probably would have gotten myself to if it hadn't arrived in my lap. So the best thing for me has been really broadening my horizons, like really a lot. Just the different groups at First Onsite, whereas I think RIA used to be the way I would meet people and kind of get outside my bubble. I now have a whole group of people who are, as much as RIA is at my fingertips, so are these people, right? They're in my Outlook. Like, I don't even have to try. I can just start typing letters and I'll come across new people every day. It really just gave me access to a whole new group of incredible people.
That's awesome. Well, I thank you for shining a positive light on this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's important, was it the bad news always travels faster? There's some sort of analogy around that. But I think we don't spend enough time talking about the good things around acquisition and, kind of embracing the fact that it's a normal part of what happens to an industry as it grows and matures. Right.
Yeah. And I'll say, not just speaking for me, but for a lot of my staff here, like, the exposure to the different kinds of work that we might not have been able to do as a smaller company. We could do some of it, but not at the level we can now at First Onsite, and the way they have all grown and been able to have kind of these new experiences and sort of going to other places to train. We've had people now who've like gone up to Canada and helped them handle an AWE. So like, it's not just my exposure. It's like this whole group has really sort of gotten this opportunity to like have all this career development, and they haven't had to leave their seat.
That's cool. So why, so you got bit by the property restoration bug a couple of decades ago, right? You made the choice to stay in the industry. What is it about the industry that keeps you here?
It's interesting. I just said this morning to some new hires on my team, where at the end of the day, no matter what you've done that day, whether you've supported other stakeholders at the company, whether you've worked on a small project, whether you've just gotten information to somebody, anything you've done can be traced to helping people after a bad situation. Like, bottom line, our company and anyone in the industry, our job and what everyone has, when you have the bug, your passion is around helping people. And no matter what you do at a restoration company, bottom line, you're contributing to that. And that is a very strong reason for me to stay in this industry.
Feels counterintuitive to like the cutthroat East Coast, like every man, woman, and child for themselves. Like, I put that into some context. Do I have a misguided view of New York City? I've never been. Like, full disclosure, I've never been. So
everyone does. Okay. Everyone does. New York is an amazing community. It's a place where people really, 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 really come together. Like it's a united front when something happens. There are just times it's an amazing place to be a part of this community, as big as it is. So yeah, I'd say in everyone that we've hired, their desire to be part of a company that helps people is a driver. I mean, the flip point of that is, right, in New York City, there's every kind of business. And people are really looking for a business that makes a difference. And we just naturally do in restoration. Yeah. It's also not a business people like hear about a lot, so they're kind of always intrigued.
Wait, it's not finance? What is it? Yeah,
exactly. So it's something different.
Awesome. like, what's your favorite part? So walk, actually, let me take a step back from that. You started as sales admin support, and then just walk me through the evolution of
Sure.
Kelley through the years, right? Because I
Through the
know you
years.
kind of, I don't know what you've done that well. I know you as an individual, right? And you seem like the type of individual, you're the Swiss Army knife, where I'm like, it doesn't matter what the problem is. If I throw Kelley and time at it, it gets handled, right? So tell me about your experience and the variety of roles that you've had.
Sure. So started in the sales admin role, quickly started to sort of cross train into the project admin side, and then jumped over to support. He was one of the vice presidents at the time. He led the project management or ops team, depending on what language you use, but also had sales responsibilities. So he sort of had a wide breadth of responsibilities, which made me learn an awful lot about the company pretty quickly. Sort of became the lead for our admin team. And then the role that I had for many, many years in sort of the HR generalist field opened up. I had never done HR. I learned a lot real quick, but I knew our systems. I knew how we worked. That role was sort of a conglomerate of everything HR, everything office management, everything back-end management, managing IT, like all the extra stuff that you need in business was what that role really did. And through that, I worked really hard at our like employee experience stuff, our engagement stuff. Culture was a big part of what I was responsible for, as well as a budget of, office expenses and managing all that for 5 locations. So I did do a little bit of everything. In fact, when we had big projects, I frequently could also just go on site and be a representative of the company on site. So we had a large job that we had a trailer on for a while, and I sort of just was there every day managing like paperwork and answering the door when people would just show up and all of that kind of stuff. So I've done the on-site stuff, and then developed really into a leader for the company. Sort of helped our leadership team stay on track with our goals. Was sort of the person who continued to drive that forward. And then, with First On Site, I jumped into sort of projects at first, staying kind of in the HR side, and then dripping into some culture stuff. And then for about a year now, I've been leading our global marketing team at First On Site. We had the position was open. They asked me to sort of step in and make sure the team was happy and moving forward and productive. And so that's what I've been doing for the last year.
Global marketing team. So what countries is First On Site in? I don't know.
US and Canada. We'll travel into Mexico as well. We don't have any actual like dots on the map in Mexico, but we're there right now. But primarily US and Canada are biggest areas right now. And Puerto Rico.
Any aspirations of going across the Atlantic or the Pacific?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the next 5 years, but it's there. We'd love to be able to have that big a footprint.
Maybe it's my proximity to Australia, and I talk to Owen Boak too much, but I can't stop thinking about our industry in Australia and just how it's developing rapidly. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, I'll say I was in Venice in January, and I just stood there for a moment, sort of having a panic attack about thinking about that city flooding and like all the rules about equipment and what you can and can't do, and everything's so narrow and tiny, and like, how do they even? So it would be a really different animal to be in some other places. But
I can't imagine there's a lot of drywall in Venice.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, there was a lot of stonework.
So, what would you say? Well, let me ask this question. What's your favorite HR story that you can share with us? I know that there's always HR stories you cannot share, right? But what's your favorite HR story that you can share? And I'll reciprocate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many. So I think the easier ones are interviews, right? I was sort of like so gung-ho. I didn't always think about safety. I'll put it that way. So I had an interview like after hours, and I was the only one here in this office in Midtown Manhattan. And the gentleman who came in refused to sit and just stress walked around our conference room the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
I literally don't remember our conversation because the whole time I was like, oh no, I've made a huge mistake. Like I have put myself in a very dangerous situation.
Yeah.
So I learned from that. Everything was fine. Nothing traumatic happened. I locked the door very promptly after he left. But I had the next night, I had done the same thing to myself, booked an after hours. Because I'm like, oh, I got to be accommodating. These people have jobs. I have to and I pretended I was doing like a craft project and I had like scissors in the conference room with me. So it became like if people saw me holding scissors, they're like, do you have a late it became like a thing around the office. And then they got even smarter and they're like, please tell someone that so that you're not here alone. And I was like, yeah, this was all very dumb. Sorry. It was like, didn't think it through. So yeah, it was more on me. It was more of like my own, like, put it together, lady.
I had one, I was trying to spare somebody their dignity and I came in early and it was a termination situation and I had to terminate them. And I did it by myself and they like started crying and begging for their job and everything. And, you know, it was a lady and I was a guy and it was a situation. I was like, oh, I screwed up. Like I should have had somebody here with me. It would have been way more objective. And like everything that happened, like could have been taken in a horrible light and painted me really bad. And, you know, it was one of those things that all worked out. But my HR story, we had done some discrimination training. And we had one of our supervisors, you know, tough, gruff, local style guy, like just, I'm sure there's, you know, these characters in Manhattan where, you know, more just bark, right? Like, go get it done. What are you, lazy? Come on, you know? And, you know, just kind of that element of culture. And I remember the lady who was doing the training for us and him were going back and forth. And you could just see him scratching his head because he knew he was going to be himself, right? Like he was just going to bark. And she's like, look, it's not the words that you say, it's the fact that you're directing them at one person. And the line that came out of his mouth, and I'll never forget this, was, he goes, so wait, if I'm going to call somebody a crybaby, I have to call them all crybabies. I can't just call one person a crybaby. I say, you guys is all crybabies. And she's like, yes, exactly. And he's like, okay, got it. So like after that, you'd see him like get riled up and really want to lay into somebody. And then he'd just be like, you guys is all crybabies, and then walk away.
Good takeaway.
Hey, he made it work, right? And we were clean. So, you know, some of it never gets worked out that way, but you know, it was fun.
There's a lot of on the job trip over yourself learning in HR.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes the, you know, a better craft person of the, you know, of HR, right? Like the work that we do in the field, you know. I always say, I equate it back to paddling, right? Like the more time you spend in the water, the better you get. Like we can teach you all the mechanics and everything like that. And I think HR, you know, whether you're a mitigation technician or you're a carpenter, right? There's no substitute for just being there and doing the work. Yeah. You get better that way.
Yeah. All the trainings in the world until you have that conversation that you have to have.
Yeah. What's your favorite area of the business? Because you've kind of got the opportunity to skate around.
I have. I don't know if I have a favorite area. I mean, I think I naturally gravitate towards ops because to me, I have a very process brain, and to me, it feels very satisfying. But I've worked a lot on the sales and marketing side, so I can make it processy, right? And kind of satisfy my desire for that. I really think I thrive in just sort of solving the problems. And at the root of most things I've done, it's always been about making my team members, my staff, my employees, whatever we want to call them, have a better experience at work. So it doesn't have to be an HR project. It can be fixing something on the back end, right? It could be an improvement to a system. It can be an efficiency. It can be, you know, any of that stuff. I thoroughly enjoy because the result of it I can see.
Oh, cool. So your relationship with RIA, how long have you been in the committee, kind of in the RIA ecosystem, active in contributing? It's been a long time, right?
Not as long as everyone else who's been doing these interviews, I'll say. I'm probably.
Well, in my mind, you've been there the whole time, right?
Oh, all right.
Like you
Totally.
came before me, so like you must have been there for a long time.
I started volunteering on the planning committee. Like that's where I got looped in first. And my first show that we were planning was the year that was canceled for COVID, and we had to go
Oh
virtual.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first one. I wasn't totally head at that point. I have been since that event. So once we got back in person, I've been the chair for the planning committee. So I've kind of always been on that end. I've gotten involved in some other like back end projects, but I haven't served on any other committees yet because it does take the planning committee takes a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
Like we before the current year event, we are talking about next year. So
yeah. And I it's been interesting because I've had my finger on the pulse more with the events and their planning cycles and everything. And to your credit, RIA has their stuff together. Whereas I watch a majority of events like pull together speakers in the last like 8 weeks and that kind of stuff. Like if you're wanting to do anything of significance with RIA, the second this year's event is over, they're planning next year, and you better be on the phone getting involved or it's not going to happen. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I can't take credit for that. I mean, AH, who was the organization that manages RIA, is incredible. I did 1 year with our previous management company, and it's night and day.
Nice.
But I also am I am not a procrastinator. I cannot plan an event of that size in 8 weeks. Like it'll make my brain explode. So I do get on it early because I also know like we're an industry that can be easily disrupted, right? So when we have the time, let's get out ahead of this stuff. Let's get people excited about it because oftentimes we're asking people to prepare work too, right? And they need the time. So to me, it's all about like, if you're going to have a good quality show, you can't last minute it.
You and I are cut from different cloths. Sure. And so you're brand new to the board this cycle, correct?
I am. I think I'm the newest.
You definitely are. Yeah, you are because you came in after what's his name from Mammoth, right? John.
Yeah, I came in after an acquisition had to have a seat change. So yes, I've been to one board meeting so far.
So first board meeting, what'd you think?
Oh, I felt like I knew nothing. I felt like the dumbest person in the room. Like it was amazing to watch.
I had no idea.
Oh, okay, good.
You bluffed everybody really well.
That's mostly my skill set. No, it was just like, holy crap, these folks know so much. And I just felt like I had like a tip of the iceberg into the knowledge of everyone else into that room. It was amazing. And it was also amazing to watch a board like so supportive, so forward moving, not like, okay, we can't agree, we'll just not deal with this. It's like, we can't agree, but what's next? What's the next action item here, right? So if we didn't solve something, it has a next step. We all had to commit to stuff by the end of the meeting. I mean, it's not a board that gets together and hangs out. Like we do work, which I love. Like if it was just I mean, I love you guys, but I'm not going to spend my time doing that. So to be on a board that is so effective is like, I treasure it. It's amazing.
I feel like everybody recognizes what's at stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the opportunity cost of inaction for us as a board is far too great. And I think that's what forces everybody to, when we get to a point to where there's a stalemate and there's two people, factions on either side of an issue, as opposed to just throwing our hands up and quitting, we push through that awkwardness and align on a goal or a position that we can all get behind. And I think that's one of the things that makes it truly special.
And a lot of passion and respect, right? It isn't, even when there are differing opinions, it's a discussion. It's not like, forget it, I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. It's truly a discussion through things, so it never feels adversarial. But yeah, and people who care a lot about what the result will end up being. That feels good.
And so if you could fast forward from this moment forward, and there is a a Kelley Dolan award or a legacy stamp or a plaque on the wall, that says, hey, she was here and she helped us accomplish X within the RIA. What would that be for you? Where's your passion lie within the RIA?
Ooh, I've had a few things over the years that I've wanted to like dive deep into, but haven't, wasn't in the position to, I think, until now.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of passion around our bond with IICRC and
Mm-hmm.
making that a strength for the industry. And with that, sort of the education certification piece, because I see that as a huge benefit for staff, right? Like I see that, and I'm always so tied to what the staff needs and wants. And then another piece I'd love for us to explore more is sort of the diversity piece of the industry, and how are we doing as a group there, and what are the next steps for us truly as an organization that values diversity, openness, and inclusion. So that's always something that's kind of intrigued me about next steps for RIA.
I know I was talking with Michelle Blevins because she did her first public article published in Spanish. And she said it was one of the most read articles all year, right? And if that's not an indicator of the need for a little bit more diversity and inclusion, then I don't know what is. And I think it's just making things more accessible,
I love that. Yeah. More accessible. Yeah, just accessibility is like the word to use. That's great.
So what's the one thing you can't stop thinking about relative to our industry? Just kind of lives rent free in your mind all the time.
Oh, all the time. There's so many.
Got to pick one.
I'm going to revert back to like, how do we keep staff? How do we keep engaged staff? How do we make staff feel rewarded? The biggest change I've seen is with people who've been in the industry the longest are like the lack of reward they sort of feel in their jobs now, like that it's harder and harder, that it's always a fight. And that worries me. That worries me that it's getting harder to keep people who have the skill set, which is only going to make it harder to attract the people who we want to have that skill set. And that's kind of my biggest, what do we do? How do we move forward from here? Distraction, I think
that, I've held the opinion for a long time that like, if you don't have a sense of altruism, then this industry just chews you up and spits you out. You don't last long, right?
Totally.
So there's like, if altruism is a glass, right? And it's full, right? The job in the industry and the tasks will tend to drain on that cup of altruism. And the old school ways were like, hey, and this is, I'm speaking from personal experience, like I take it as a personal responsibility to fill my glass, right? And I fill my glass. Sometimes I get to do things that are in line with the industry or the things that we do in the field. But more often than not, it's getting out into the woods and getting lost and finding a moment of solace by myself that really fills that glass, gives me more perspective. So then that way, like all the BS fades away and I'm just like, okay, I'm centered. I'm ready to go back in and take it on. And I think one of the challenges that we're running into as an industry is that glass, like we need to take responsibility as employers to find ways to fill that glass to help our employees out, because the draw on that glass has grown over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
It's like the analogy that plays out in my head relative to that.
Yeah. You mentioned that. I was just at an event where they were talking about digital marketing, right? It's a hot button everywhere.
Yeah.
And they were saying in digital marketing, you're not just competing with your competitors anymore. You're competing with the news. You're competing with your family and friends updates. You're competing with shopping. You're competing with the world in a digital marketing space, not just people in your industry. And that to me was and that's everywhere. That's everywhere all the time. I was like, man.
It really is. I mean, and how do you, I'm sorry, we're not going to go down that road. I don't even know how you do that. I'm just going to tell you what, you figure it out and come back to me and tell me how we do it. And then we'll let everybody else know and the world will be a better place.
Well, yeah, give me a couple hours.
Okay, you got it.
I wish.
Mentors or sources of inspiration for you as you've grown through your career.
I mean, obviously, my original Maxon's crew, Damon Gersh, who was, he and his father started the company together. I never met Max, but Damon as shaping me as a leader and identifying early on that I could do it and giving me the confidence really to do it. Jeff Gross here, who's the person I, supported probably the most and worked with the longest of the Maxon's crew, who just helped. I mean, he's just one of the most empathetic and thoughtful people I've ever met, and just striving to kind of work that into a management style from him. And then I'll say literally everyone at RIA that I've ever met and worked with on a project has been amazing. And at the First On-Site team, Tony Garver, my current CAO, is great. Jeff Johnson, our CEO, they're just wonderful people who care a lot about this industry and the people in it.
Yeah.
That's what gets me. And that's what gets me about pretty much everyone that I've interacted with through RIA is the care. The people who start maybe a franchise or jump in it to see like, hey, this is a risk-free business, right? Like a recession doesn't matter. And it's like, we don't see them next year because they don't have the feels about restoration as a whole. So those folks who've been in it for a long time, always inspiring.
Yeah. I met Damon, when was it? 2018, maybe. All the good things in this world come through Debbie Bogar. She invited me to Detroit for a restoration affiliates meeting. And Damon was like, I'm going for a walk before we go have dinner. Who's in for a walk? And I'm like, I'll go for a walk. And so him and I just kind of walked along the Detroit River and talked story. And whenever I find myself shy on vision specifically, he's still somebody I call. And I might not talk to him for years on end, but every single time I have a conversation with him, it's like, oh, Anthony, yeah, I remember you. Yeah. What do you need? How do I help? Right. And I'm just some nobody, right? I can only imagine how cool that relationship was, getting to work with him day in and day out.
Yeah. And like, he was just mostly unflappable, right? Like, even a volunteer thing he started in his town, I was there helping him the day of the event. And it was like, it's one of those moments in my life that's pinned. It was like everyone running up to him like, Damon, we need more chairs. Damon, I need tape. Damon, do you know where this is? Damon, do you know? And I was like, I'm going to punch all these people in the face. And like, I was like, handle it, grown-ups. And he like stepped away from them. And I'm like, I don't know how you just didn't lose your mind there. And he's like, I can add light or I can add heat. And I add light in this situation. He's like, I'm creating this. I want it to be a success. I'm going to add light. And I was like, oof. I would have like given someone my walkie-talkie and been like, I've made a mistake. I'll see y'all later.
Somebody get me a glass of wine. I'm going to watch it burn. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
All right. This would be a fun question for you. If you had $100,000 to start a restoration business today, how would you deploy the capital? Because I would say dare I say your perspective is probably on the shallower end of the entrepreneurial scale, right?
It is.
You have some entrepreneurial tendencies, which makes you who you are. But, as compared to, like a Warner Cruz or, Mark Davis, right? Like,
yeah, like buildings and equipment is not first on my list. No shock to the people who know my process brain. It's the system. So investing in the right, we know more than ever, documentation is the thing that matters the most to the people who pay our bills, making that easy for staff, and investing in staff in a way, like I love the idea of an employee-owned company where the people who are on board are truly invested in the success because they earn from it, right? Yeah. So setting up the systems to allow people to do their jobs the best way possible, the easiest way possible, and the most satisfying way possible. So at the end of the day, they feel really good. And then those benefits and that care for the team and making sure the team knows when they need a break, when they need to step away, that somebody's got their back, right? Building in the team structure that really focuses on that. So that requires some education. That requires some like true management upskilling that I think always kind of gets lost in our industry because we're so worried about the next big project.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all back end, but not kind of in an invisible way, right? It's not the building, it's not the equipment, it's how we get our people settled.
I always found that if you can make it, like whatever it is from a process innovation perspective, if you can make it work for the individuals in the field, like I will make things work for the individuals in the field and create problems for the office, because the office just has more tools at their disposal, you know, and like can create solutions around what works for the individuals in the field.
Yeah, I'd look at it a little bit differently, where the people in the office need to have the good setup too, because when the problems in the field happen and the field's like that's who they call. So the office needs to be ready. And that, which means they can't be like bogged down in unnecessary steps. Like they need to be able to help them in the best way possible.
I agree. So if I'm in my first year or two of business and, you know, maybe my glass of altruism has run dry and I'm wanting to just hit the eject button, what's the advice you give me?
We have always said this business is lumpy. So if you're always looking to be going up, 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 and feeling up, 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 and having experiences up, 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 this isn't the right place for you. So if you're a few years in and you've been up and down, you're doing the right stuff. Like, it's kind of what I would say. Like that's sort of normal. I'd also question why'd you start, and are you feeding that need? And if you're not, how can you? So if you got started because you wanted to make a difference in your community and you're finding you're chasing storms on another part of the country, let's think about what is it in your community that you could get tied back into and dialed back into. You know, there's that kind of piece to it. There's always a way to remember why you started. And was it because you wanted to be a great leader and owner and manager and have a great team? Then you need to stop going to jobs and you need to figure out how to build that team. So you have to be honest with yourself.
It's very strong advice. Because in the world of running businesses, right, we run down bunny trails a lot of the time expecting this is going to be the thing that's going to make it work, right? And quite often, they're not. And you need to run back to the last point that everything worked and fire up the motor again and keep moving in that direction.
Yeah, and like those are great things. If those keep you engaged and those keep you operational, just don't throw a wrench into the works with your whole staff every time you get to do that, right? Like if you get excited about something, go check it out, but make sure you've built the structure in place that your team can kind of keep doing what they're doing.
Somebody referred to that. It might have been the Scott Tackett over at Dolan. Used to call it seagull management. Fly in, take a shit, and take off. Right?
Steal the French fries and get out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Dallas, right? It is, oh my gosh, I should have these dates right in front of me. What are the dates? You know the dates off the top.
8th through 10th.
8th through 10th. And you have some inside scoop because you're on the planning committee. So I'm kind of hoping maybe you can dish a few details and get everybody all jazzed and excited. What can they expect?
Yeah, I'm always really proud of the content the team puts together. I feel like we've done a great job with maybe few exceptions over the last few years. If you see me making angry faces in the back of the room, you'll be able to tell which sessions I end up not being happy about. But this year has some really great stuff. We were able to do, because we have enough rooms in advance, we're able to do a few more breakouts. So we are able to do some more technical stuff as well as some more on the business stuff. So that's really exciting. Our last session of the event this year is actually learning from some of our big leaders. And it's some big names in the industry who are going to come in and talk about be a little vulnerable and talk about where they made some mistakes, maybe where they made some missteps, and like advice, truly like heartfelt advice on like how to stick with it. I think that's going to be an awesome, awesome, awesome session and worth sticking around for the extra day in Dallas for. Make it a long weekend, do something new and exciting. This is random, but happening while we're there. On Monday the 8th, there's a solar eclipse.
Yeah.
And Dallas is going to be one of the best places to view from. So it is going to get busy. So I'm telling you right now, you have 3 days left for early bird pricing and to book your hotel rooms. Do it and come in early on Monday because it's mid-afternoon. Like the best viewing, I think, is around, I don't remember, it's 2:04 or 2:40. It's some combination of those numbers, I think. So you want to land in the morning. You want to be able to check in, we're going to have glasses for everyone so you don't make a crazy unsafe decision and stare at a solar eclipse. But yeah, come experience that with your RIA people. Cause when again, do you get to be with like a group of people who've probably impacted you a lot and experience like a universe event? Like it's, to me, it's like a little kismet. Like it just feels really right and really natural. So get in early, get settled. We always have education. We always have extra stuff there. Yeah, it's going to be a good show. A lot of water talk, a lot of standards talk, a lot of standards going on, but then also some stuff about what people and, you know, how to be the right leader, which is going to be thrilling.
Awesome. And so I have to ask, did you know about the eclipse and then plan the dates around it? Because you seem like the one person who would be looking that far into the future and have your stuff that dialed in.
I wish. No, in fact, the management team at RIA does a great job booking. Like our dates for 2025 are already booked, and our event space is already booked because you get better pricing when you kind of go far out, and especially if you contract multiple years with like the same chain. This is inside event planning for all you who needed this lesson. So we stick with the same date range because it's typically we don't have any conflicts in the industry. So we've kind of solidified that as the second week of April as like our week. So no, the eclipse was not on purpose. But you know what? Someday I plan to be able to make solar eclipse happen in accordance with my schedule as opposed to like the universe's schedule. So step one in my world domination plans.
You and my 2-year-old would get along very well.
I'm just I don't really want to be responsible for all that.
I told my wife, I'm like, I think you remember Pinky and the Brain?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she's the brain. Like she's just the one that's like, oh, we're gonna take this thing over. And I'm like, kid, you can't. Like, stop trying, please. You're driving.
No. Me. And as I said it, I was like, no, never mind. I don't want that responsibility.
Oh my gosh. All right. Anything you'd like to share in closing?
No, just I really mean it. The RIA has changed my life. It's made me a better person. It's made me a more experienced person. I've met amazing people without even trying. Like it just happens. So if you've questioned it or debated it, come this year. Come experience one of the events. You'll be so excited to go again and see all the people you meet and get the great experience and knowledge and to build that network of support that we all need. So just come try it.
You gave me chills just now. That was good. All right. Well, thanks so much, Kelley. I appreciate you taking the time to talk story with us. And I look forward to seeing you. Is it next week?
I think so.
All right. Well, I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Anthony. This was fun.
Thank you, Kelley.
Okay. Bye.